Subscribe to get the news the legacy media won't tell you and only the Daily Signal can bring to you.
If you actually follow the money, it's funded by big tech, Bill Gates, Google, George Soros, the cartels. They want this chaos in California because they don't want this rule of law, because then we will crack down the rule of law on big tech.
Well, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the Daily Signal podcast, Allison Huynh. She hails from California, not originally, but she is from California and is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, really a civic activist. Thank you so much, Allison, for being here. Really great to have you back on the show.
A pleasure to be here, Virginia. Great to see you again.
Well, Allison, I want to get your thoughts on the state of California and what we are already seeing from California in anticipation of Trump's coming administration. We saw shortly after Trump won the election that California Governor Gavin Newsom came out and said he was going to Trump-proof the state. And he has called a special session of Congress in California to try and do that. They're putting together a fund to essentially have on hand to file lawsuits against a Trump administration. Allison, let me get your reaction to Governor Newsom saying he wants to Trump-proof California.
That's a really interesting point. Why do we need to Trump-proof California? Most of the Americans, we voted for Trump, and outside of the big cities such as San Francisco and Los Angeles, California mostly is red. We want to have a change. There is a California and a national mandate to make our streets safer, to stop the hole in immigration, and there is a crisis in America. I've gone on national TV, living here in San Francisco, talking about it, and I feel like the state, the government, the Dems, they have gaslit us. They said, oh, there's no problem. What are you talking? You're overreacting. Well, let me just say, another grocery store, major grocery store in San Francisco, Safeway on Webster Street, it just closed down. The Target right next to Stanford University, where all the kids go to back to school shopping, has closed down. Why? Well, because of theft. There are huge problems in terms of crime, in terms of illegal immigration, and overdose. I have 3 teenagers. No matter if you're rich, you're poor, having teenagers, having high school students here, there's a fentanyl crisis. I don't want to say their name, but I have some friends from many years. Their son recently had a fentanyl overdose. It affects everyone in this country, and especially in the SF Bay Area. And she was a very well-known high-tech executive. This is a national crisis. We need to sit down. We need to talk about this and be curious about this problem and not just gaslight the population. And I think by waging this war that Gavin Newsom is doing, he's ignoring the real problem. We need to understand how this open border is affecting the open drug fair, how that's affecting the addiction problem, and why our young people and also adults as well are dying. And so I think with President Trump, the way that he listens and talks to people, and I love that podcast with Theo Vaughn where he's actually asking Theo Vaughn about why is he addicted, what's the root cause of addiction, the loneliness, the lack of support, lack of family values in certain communities. Let's talk about all this. Can we put together rehabilitation centers for our young people that get into trouble? How can we offer services to family to help these young adults in transition and in crisis? But by basically Trump-proofing and suing the federal government and basically disobeying federal law, I don't know what to say. This is going against the rule of law and against the will of the American people. The American people voted. So I guess Gavin Newsom will have to talk to the U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Let them iron it out.
I think they're definitely going to be having some conversations, maybe more so in court between lawyers. But Allison, I love getting your perspective because we had the privilege of meeting at the Republican National Convention over the summer, and you got to share your story on the Daily Signal podcast. You used to be really a fundraiser for the Obama campaign way back in the day, and you were all on board. And then you began to kind of see, okay, wait, some of these policies that I thought were great for America are not, and ultimately kind of shifted towards the right. So you bring such a unique perspective, I think, to the table. But I want to speak a little bit more to that issue of immigration that you brought up, because this is really at the center of where California is saying we are not going to cooperate with a Trump administration. One of the pillars of Trump's campaign platform was this promise of deportations and of deporting first criminal illegal aliens, those who have committed crimes, who are in our country illegally. What do you make of California essentially saying we don't have to abide by federal law, we're not going to cooperate with ICE in these deportations, and we're going to do everything we can to remain a sanctuary state? What do you make of that?
Well, I feel like the government officials are breaking the law if they're not going to follow the mandate of the president, of the federal laws, and the will of the people. Look, I'm an immigrant. I came here the legal way. I didn't skip in line. My father served with the U.S. Air Force. We protected democracy in Southeast Asia as best as we could, of course, given the geopolitical situation there. And we stood in line and we were able to come here, and I became a U.S. citizen. We didn't cut in line. My father and the Vietnamese community, for the most part, are very pro-Trump because we fought communism and socialism in Asia. So we see the ills of socialism. The way that California is doing this, not to get into like all the details, but we're just opening the gates and allowing all these illegal immigrants to come in. A lot of criminals, drug dealers, and it's all funded by George Soros and the cartels, right? A lot of these district attorneys, if you actually follow the money, it's funded by big tech, Bill Gates, Google, George Soros, the cartels. They want this chaos in California because they don't want this rule of law, because then we will crack down the rule of law on big tech, on these big financial institutions like Soros. That's how he makes his money. Look at how he made his money. He shorted the British pound and did all these manipulative things, and now he's buying up all these radio stations. So if we don't regulate them and then we bring in all these illegal immigrants, they basically are allowed to vote, and they'll vote for the Dems because in California, there's no voter ID and requirements for these elections. This leads to basically a state of chaos, and the Dems want that. I have been very outspoken about this because I lead with American values first. I lead with family values first. This makes sense. I came from Asia where, family values are really important. And I visited Mexico City. One of my good friends is there. And many of our drug dealers in America come from Mexico City, and they don't have a drug problem there. They just make money by dealing drugs and killing our youth in America. But Mexico itself, they are very religious, they're very family focused. So why are we having this border, open border, that are allowing illegal people to come in to really take advantage of us, to kill our youth, to destroy law and order in our country in the name of profit? It really is about money. And they've bought our liberal politicians in this regards. What they need to do is just stop the madness. I love that President Trump is very practical. We need to have safe streets. We need to have good schools. And, look, the people have spoken. So many people have moved to Texas where I'm originally from before I went to Stanford University, people are moving to Florida. For the last few years, there has been an exodus because people can't stand this. We pay the highest taxes in the country, highest state taxes in the country. And yet, what do? We give the money out for free to illegal immigrants.
Allison, as you're speaking, I'm thinking a concern that I know I personally have for the state of California, and I wonder if you share this, is as Governor Gavin Newsom and other state leaders in California say we're not going to participate in deportations, illegal aliens are safe in the state of California, and because the Trump administration has said we're going to deport illegal alien criminals first, do you think that all of these illegal alien criminals are going to rush into California and we're going to see a spike in crime, even more so in California, because California will become a safe haven for illegal alien criminals?
That's a great point because other states are cracking down. They understand the mandate, and so we are already ridden with crime. My daughter, unfortunately, was attacked in Los Angeles. She's a nursing student, and the district attorney at that time, George Gascon, now he's ousted. He was supported by George Soros. Didn't do anything about that. You see this in San Francisco, in Oakland, in one of my favorite districts, the Richmond district, where it's kind of like the new Chinatown. A lot of Chinese American, Asian American owned businesses. Crime is way up. There's 21,000 thefts. That's a lot. 21,000 thefts in just the last 2 years. You call the police, no one will do anything about it. It will increase. And this is the price that we pay for this experiment that the governor, that the district attorney, and their financial backers want to do, which is Marxism. It's socialism at the end of the day. I know there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of turbulence on the street. Grocery stores are closing. Crazy stuff happening at the high school. They want to change the name of Abraham Lincoln High School because they said he's a racist. I say he freed the slaves. So there's all this chaos. So what do we make of this? And I tell my friends that we're basically frogs being boiled alive, but they just turn up the heat little by little every year. I can see it because I grew up in a Marxist communist country until I was 7 years old. And my father was a freedom fighter with the U.S. military. He flew planes with the U.S. Air Force, and we were able to get out. But I talked to many of my friends from Venezuela, from Cuba, from the Eastern Bloc, and if you come from a Marxist communist country, you realize what this chaos really entails. But like sitting here, I really am in the hot seat. Like, why do we have all these stores? We have Target closing, we have Safeway closing, we have Whole Foods closing, we have Union Square closing, Van Ness, which is a major thoroughfare. It's basically the highway as you get across to the Golden Gate Bridge. It used to be bustling. I went rock climbing there and I would go see Tony Say, who was one of the founders of Zappos. We would go to Tommy's Joint for like some late night food. Now the whole entire street is basically a dead zone. And all these socialist things that they've done, they spent $350 million to create these special bus lanes, and the buses are empty. All these new programs, they have open plazas in San Francisco that they've developed. The only people in there are drug dealers and drug users. And so we've turned the city and we've financed the city to create these socialist type programs. And the people who are here, because I was in Van Ness the other day, I looked around the corner, there were drug dealers from Honduras. I was biking around with a friend of mine and we went to see a show. We locked up our bikes. We came back, the bikes were stolen. So you have thieves, you have the drug dealers. It has really become a war zone in San Francisco. And then when I speak out about it, when other people speak out about it, they say, hey, you're overreacting. You know, we don't really have this problem. California beautiful Golden State. According to the governor, it's a sanctuary city like Rome. Rome was a sanctuary city founded by immigrants from the Trojan War. And so, we want to have this mythical, romanticized version of sanctuary cities and a very romanticized image of thieves, like in Victor Hugo's book, Les Miserables, that these thieves really need the food. They need the money to support their sister's infant baby and family. And so why should they go to jail for stealing a loaf of bread? So that's the narrative of the socialists, the Marxists, officials and their supporters. And so that's what they tell us to gaslight us and just to keep us down and to slowly boil us. But I say this is full-blown socialism, and we're moving into this Marxist communist state. And let me tell you, there's nothing romantic, there's nothing idyllic about this philosophy, because I lived it. I remember standing in line with my mother in communist Vietnam for 8 hours to have just like a bag of rice that would last us and her 5 kids for a whole month. And we're moving towards that. Look at all the grocery stores closing down. People just want food. They just want to go to the buffet of innovation, of technology, of growth. And that's what Donald Trump is offering. And he appointed great people, a very wonderful cabinet, including Elon Musk, which I really trust him to allow us to grow our country on the technology, on the science side, and to have that framework for crypto, for AI, create jobs for everyone. I want America to have this buffet, whether you're black, you're white, you're gay, as long as you're here legally and you've not committed a crime, we all have a chance at that buffet. But if you came here illegally, we don't know your intentions are. You should not be allowed to cross the border and have a kid, and that kid is now a U.S. citizen, and you're a U.S. citizen taking care of that baby. There are so many loopholes in our system right now that is causing problems for citizens like you and I, Virginia. So we need to put American citizens first, people who are making a meaningful contribution to society. Yes, we understand when you have fallen on hard times. Yes, we understand that, you have become addicted to fentanyl. Let's look at how we can help the youth of America, and we offer some support to allow them to help themselves. But we're not going to believe this Victor Hugo narrative anymore. I know it's one of my favorite books, one of my favorite Broadway shows, but like their narrative, this is a false narrative that they're saying that these criminals, they have a good heart, they're well-intentioned, and it's a sanctuary city, much like Rome right after the Trojan War. This is a mythology. And so don't sit here and tell me that my reality, don't gaslight me and tell me that my narrative isn't real. That's why I'm getting a divorce. That's why I have been divorced from the Democratic Party. They just don't listen. They don't care. They don't see the reality. Come here, film Van Ness Avenue, see for yourself. Come here, see the open drug fairs. Come and see the borders, the open borders. Come to Eagle Pass, Texas. See what's going on. That's why Kamala Harris never went to the border until right before the election. And Tom Homan, our new border czar, he's already down there. He's not even on the clock yet, and he's already down there. And Trump is down there. I know Elon Musk is down there, well, because of SpaceX as well. And I've been down there because I'm originally from South Central Texas. So seeing is believing. You can't gaslight us. This is happening. This is reality. And we are just trying to be practical, solve it, and create a buffet for American citizens who are doing the hard work.
Yeah. Allison, do you think that there is hope for California? I mean, you're talking about the control that individuals like George Soros have, this really Marxist mission that so many folks that you're seeing has influenced state leaders. in California. Is California just too far gone, especially at a time where you have leaders like Gavin Newsom saying, it doesn't matter what you do, Mr. President Trump, we're going to be doing our own thing in California? Do we just let California go?
I don't think so. I am intrinsically a very optimistic person. I'm a child of war-torn communist Vietnam. I've been through some really hard times, and California is going through hard times now. And Americans, we have gone through some really hard times, but we will persevere. And just like the president has gone through some really hard times. Look, 2 assassinations, 1 hit him. He's been indicted how many times? More than 80 times. And he's a fighter. The American people are fighters. We are tough. When we are kicked, when we're down, we don't go to therapy. We fight, and sometimes we make jokes. And so I am an American. I came here legally. We stood in line. We are hardworking Americans, and we look where we're going. The next 4 years are great. California has so many natural resources, so many smart, talented people in Silicon Valley where I am, so many creative people down in Hollywood, Los Angeles. So many great iconic movies that are really like very inspirational socially as well as futuristically, that like Back to the Future, Star Wars, that really, Minority Report, sci-fi movies that really inspire the innovators around the world and in Silicon Valley. And of course, we have the Pacific Ocean, the Sierra Nevadas. We have so many beautiful, great resources in California. I'm intrinsically a very optimistic person. I think most Californians are. Gavin Newsom, I believe, is being termed out very soon in the next year or so. And so it's important for the Californian citizens to really stand up to this and say, hey, you know what? You can't gaslight us anymore. You can't go down this route. And I think more people like me speaking up, and we have a lot of legal immigrants here, whether you're from Asia, whether you're from some of these banana republics in South America, Central America, such as Venezuela, Cuba. We know what a Marxist state is. The more people like us speak up, the more people will understand that these policies will not work. We have to get back to common sense. American first policy, family values. We are a Judeo-Christian nation and state. We need to follow these principles, these guidelines. The guidelines of Marxism, of socialism, yes, it's romantic, but at the end of the day, they only benefit the fat cats, the big tech, the big government, and the big financiers.
Allison, before I let you go, I want to ask you a little bit about your future. And I know, given the fact that you are from Vietnam originally and you have that passion and you have brought that into so much of what you have done in Silicon Valley and your work as an entrepreneur, but how do you see your service in the coming years in the political space even?
Thanks so much. Yes, I would love to make a contribution and really give back, especially to serve this country in some capacity to help improve relations with Asia right now. We have South Korea in martial law. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. I know Taiwan was in martial law in the 80s, but South Korea, that's a, First Nation partner country with the United States. It's really shocking to see that in martial law. We see tensions between China and Taiwan. President Xi always follows through with what he says. And so I know that he wants to reabsorb Taiwan in the very near future. How do we address that? How do we address having a backup strategy to made in China? Vietnam shares hundreds of miles with China. It also is very strategic in the South China Sea, almost 1,000 miles along the South China Sea. 60% of trade, of maritime trade, goes through the South China Sea. So whoever controls Vietnam is very strategic in the world trade and world politics. I would love to serve America and help have some of these discussions and make sure that Vietnam is a strong ally of our great country. And it has been, we have so many countries. I know NVIDIA recently pledged $1.5 billion to open a facility in Vietnam. I have the tech background. I actually filed several patents with NVIDIA. I have scientific degrees from Stanford University. So I understand tech, and I'm starting, just as a citizen, making my contribution in the political sphere. And I speak the language, and I love the culture of Vietnam. It is very unique, but very different from China. And like Taiwan, Vietnam is very strategic, and it's right next to China and controls a very long border along the South China Sea. And it's something that China in the past has wanted to absorb. For example, not a lot of people know that China fought a war with Vietnam right after the Vietnam War in 1979. They thought Vietnam was weakened from the Vietnam War, and so they attacked Vietnam, I believe in 1979, 4 years, three and a half, 4 years after the end of the Vietnam War in 1975, when I was born, by the way. I was born right at the end of the Vietnam War, and the Vietnamese people fought back. They were fierce warriors, and they wanted to be independent, and they were able to wage a very bloody, heinous war that caused a lot of casualty on both sides. And they were able to defeat a country that was many times larger than them and had more resources. So there has been a long-term history with Vietnam and China. And I think it's important that whoever becomes the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Vietnam, has that understanding, has that passion for American U.S. Vietnam relations. Especially, we're coming on the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, and I'm very passionate about the relations, the culture, the language, the heritage, both of America. I really embody the American values, as well as my passion and love for the culture and language of Vietnam.
Wonderful. Well, Allison, thank you for your time. We always just appreciate getting your perspective and your willingness to speak out on these really critical issues. It is going to be, no doubt, a very eventful several months ahead as we look towards the inauguration of President-elect Trump. And so thank you so much for your time, Allison. Share with us, how can we follow your work? How do we keep up with what you're up to?
Yes, just on my Twitter account, Allie Huynh, ALLIHUYNH, and also on Instagram. Thank you so much, Virginia.
Allison Huynh, thank you so much for your time.